Hello. How do you express yourself? What do you feel called to do? So, in this ongoing writing, in this journaling, video blog, whatever you want to call it, basically the theme is the book that I'm writing and what it means to me. What are inspired ideas and thoughts that come to play from the book that are worth talking about and discussing and sharing so I can bring you along the writing path with me. So in this particular instance, I was contemplating on now that I've finished the first 30 chapters, I may add a chapter, I may do something different. I don't know, because the first run was basically focused on Rook, focused on her journey from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Don't get sidetracked on characters around her, on the world around her. It's basically an enclosed through her eyes version from start to finish in the book. And then once I did the run through, I figured about 1,500 words, just enough to kind of get down on paper and feel like I was complete with that particular chapter or the theme of that chapter. And when I had the chapters laid out, I looked at them and I kind of thought, what about? What comes to mind, what comes to life, what wants to breathe through me? Because I decided the story needed to be told. The story needed to breathe and have life. And I needed to tell the story, not tell my story, not tell a story. Let the story live through me. So I got done. I've done 30 chapters now, averaging 1,500 words. Some were a little more. And one was actually pretty tiny, but at the time I decided it felt right. It felt done because I knew that I was coming back. I've told people it's kind of like if I drew the story from her perspective in pencil, and now I'm going and pinning it. And as I pin it, I'm going to, on the second run through, see where it needs to breathe more, see where the characters around her, where they can show up a little more. Now I can afford to take the time, and it's not really a time thing, it's energy. I can afford to put energy into giving life to the characters around her, or even having them show up more in scenes so that they can be part of the story too. Be part of her story, though, not their story. It's all important that this is her story. And in doing so, after that second run through, once I've expanded, I'm shooting for about 2,500 words. Ideally, I'm shooting for overall 100,000 to 130,000 words, like max, somewhere in that neighborhood though. So on the second pass, I get to do that. And then the third pass is where I get to color the world in, where I get to be more descriptive and add. And then from there, I'll see what happens. I don't really know necessarily what I'm doing, but I know what I'm called to do. It feels right. And this story didn't come in like, oh, this is a story you have to tell. It all started in a writers group that I'm in. And in that group, basically one of the challenges back in October of 2025, I don't know when you're watching this, but right now it is February 2026. But in October, there was a challenge just to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, if not writing your book, at least thinking about your book, just kind of running through ideas and concepts. So that way you're building that muscle, you're building that habit of bringing your story along with you throughout the day, throughout the week. And so I decided, I knew I was to write a story. I knew I love to write. It's storyteller is what sits with me, just in my heart. Like that word just lights me up. So in there, I decided that, okay, this was a story. And, how do I write a story? Well, I don't know, which is in my benefit because there's nothing holding me back. I don't have to worry about structure. I don't have to worry about design. I should worry about what feels right. And then it can be critiqued later. So I had that freedom just to write. So I wrote a few different ways of writing. I asked AI, what are the ways of writing that I could tell this story? Obviously, I know from the first person perspective. Obviously, I know about the narrator. And then now it's become more popular to tell stories from different perceptions of different people in the story. And so I sat down and did writing exercises on that. And before I knew it, I was writing the story. And the character herself, Rook, I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, she would probably, I'm like, it's a she. Okay. That's cool. That's one more aspect. That's one more thing that came to light, that came through me. So as I'm writing this, I'm basically writing what comes through me and what feels right. And then if I get stuck, I think about, okay, well, I put myself in her shoes. Like there was even a part where I had mentioned before in previous videos about the rock quarry. I had no idea. But then I thought, well, she shows up and she isn't going to sit there and think, well, this is this and this is that. And she might look at the details for the sake of her character and her knowing her environment, but she's not going to sit there and analyze the everyday function or try to describe to herself what everything looks like. What she's going to do is she's going to be in the mode of a prisoner just arrived. You know, she didn't escape. Spoiler alert, she didn't escape prior to arriving. You'll find out in the first chapter. Prior to arriving at the rock quarry, she didn't escape. So now she's in a position of, she's here now. You know, she is settling into, now what? What's my next step? So she's just arrived, and the last thing she's going to do is analyze the area, short of looking for an escape. But at this point, she's just landed. Emotionally, she's a little overwhelmed. So she's just kind of like, okay, this is what it is. And she goes through the process of quote unquote being booked in for this world, essentially. But in this, as I'm writing, it's really a lot of lessons. Some of me is showing up in her, which is really interesting to think about. How when I put myself in her shoes to think, I'm actually drawing on my own life experience. So it makes sense. And I'm inserting, this isn't me trying to tell my story. This has nothing to do with me. This is me bonding with her and seeing her perspective, how she would act, think, and feel in the situation. And so there's a lot of growth in there. And as I write this, I'm growing, not in just a writer, not in my skills or experiences, but just in overall evaluation. I'm already pretty reflective. You know, I do a lot of analyzing and thinking about the whys and the whats and the hows with myself. And that's part of what I've also learned when I got certified as a life coach. I learned how I was able to do these things, how to provide a space for others and just to sit in the stillness and provide a grounding for them, provide the ability for them to sit and just talk, to sit and be heard, like truly heard, not just a head nod and I get it. No, actually being heard and then being reflected back, because I already do that with myself. So in doing that with the book, though, it's really interesting. Believe what you want to believe, but I believe that when we write a book, we tap into something, that stories have a life of their own, whether it be a different timeline, a different existence. There's life in a story. And so when I'm writing, I'm drawing upon that. I'm drawing upon that life, and I'm connecting to it with my experiences. Sorry, check my mic. Twice now I've actually did a video and my mic was completely off, and I looked at it and there was no sound. So just wanted to make sure. Also too, I'm not pausing these videos. I'm not going through and editing them. It's not because I don't want to do a good job or I don't want to put out good content for you. It's because I believe the value is in the message and the authenticity. It's about me standing out of my way and not being a perfectionist and just getting there and doing it. And the same way with writing the book. It can always be rewritten. I can take things out, like it is what it is. And I don't have to worry. I'm not going to hurt my feelings if I take something out. You know, I'm not married to the book, so to speak. I'm married to the story, the overall story. You know, and that way, if I don't have to fear, if I write out of my ego, if I write bad, I'm just writing. I'm just writing and I'm getting it down, and then I can go back through later. The whole point is being in the flow. You know, if you're on a surfboard, you don't pause time and look around and be like, okay, am I standing in the right spot on the surfboard? Am I good and balanced? How about this wave? How safe does this look? Is there any rocks beneath me? Is there any this? No, you go with the flow. You know, you basically, you can look back on what you've done, your experiences, and see how would you do it differently and not beat yourself up. But then next time you go out there and whatever you're doing, you are analytical and you go, okay, next time I'm going to have fun. That's the whole point of doing it, is the love of it and the passion and the enjoyment. But next time I'll try this. Next time I'll try that. It's a series of mistakes, which I don't believe in mistakes necessarily, as long as you learn from the mistake. And it's not truly a mistake, it's a learning experience. But you basically, quote unquote, mistake, you look at what you've done wrong, or at least you're perceived wrong. Maybe you looked at where the outcome wasn't what you wanted. And the same thing with writing. So, really, this particular video, I just wanted to kind of touch base and kind of where in your life, are you writing a story or telling a story? Maybe it's not on paper. Maybe it's a story through art, through music, through expression. We're coming into a time where we're getting, as they're saying, paid to be ourselves. And the whole concept is that money is no longer, the world is evolving and money isn't a hustle game. You're not hustling out there getting, working. You want more money? Work more hours. You want more money? Ask for a raise or find a different job. Hustle, hustle, get it done, work, work till your fingers are bone, blood, whatever. I can't think of the saying I was looking for, but basically that world is going away. For some, it might still exist, but we're opening up to a time where you're able to do what you love, to find your passions. And if your passion might not be, oh, I want to be a rock star. Oh, I want to be a musician. No, I want to be an artist and paint. Maybe you do it part-time. Maybe there's ways that you can take what you're passionate about and apply it to your current job or your current career field. Maybe you want to run your own business, but find the passion, follow your heart, let it guide you into what feels right. And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it any longer than you feel that you have to. You have to, in this life right now, currently during the transition, there's an exchange, there's a value exchange. And currently the value exchange is money, but the value exchange is becoming authenticity. It's becoming purpose-driven passion, putting yourself into something and then putting it out there in the world for others, for them to see themselves, for them to see the value in it, for them to come away from it a little better than they were before from the experience. And then from there, you're exchanging value, I guess maybe the way it used to be before currency, where you had a craft or a skill that you did. Maybe you made shoes, maybe you shoot horses, maybe you were a blacksmith, and you had something that you did that you were passionate about. And then you went and pursued that. And even in the book, I was just working on backstory today, and I don't know if it's going to stay in there, but I was thinking when Rook goes from her family life into the big city, quote unquote, towards the castle, the city around the castle, I thought, what would it be like for someone in a small town with a small life that wanted more, that had a passion? And I wasn't sure what it would be at the time, but something drove her to go to the castle, and it didn't quite work out. Imagine the actor that goes to LA to work and they want to be an actor or an actress, and it just doesn't work out for them. And it doesn't mean that they weren't meant to be. It just means there's a different route, a different path for them. Maybe that opens up a different path, or maybe they're not quite ready for that path and they had to learn those lessons. So that's what I was thinking. And then I was like, well, she's got to be some sort of an artist, because in the same way, I'm not trying to preach to this book, but I'm trying to tell a story through example. And I was like, in this world, we're opening up to a time where we're finding our passions, where we're pursuing what we want. And I wanted her story to be something artistic that she did that took her to the castle. And that's why she found herself in a predicament where it didn't quite work out and she had to alter her path. Granted, she became a rogue. That's not what I'm telling people to do, but I'm telling people it's okay where you're at. Where you're at in life is a result of where you've been and the choices that you've made and the decisions and the opportunities that arose and the ones you could see and couldn't see. It's a culmination of all these things. And where you're at right now, don't let that define you. That is just a part that you're playing, a lesson that you're learning. So in there, I wanted her to basically step out of the rogue. It fit her as survival. And she's coming from survival to purpose in the same way that we're kind of surviving. We're in this world working for a living and we're surviving. And then from there, I kind of want you to step into your purpose. It's your choice. It's your life. You do what you want to do. But in the book, I want to open up the minds and hearts of people through storytelling. And this is turning out to be a pretty amazing story. Absolutely love it. But getting to what I was saying, the artistry that I settled on, because she has an awareness of mechanisms. If she's a rogue, she has an awareness of how things work. And I was like, okay, well, I want her to have some blacksmithing concepts. Maybe not be a blacksmith herself, but essentially the concept of building a sword, of how swords are prepared and created, and kind of take that into her story as she's realizing these things. And then in there, though, what I realized and what I came across today as I was going back to re-edit the first chapter, and I'm looking and I'm like, here's a spot where there's a transition period in the storytelling. And I feel like this spot needs something. And I decided to have a flashback to not her childhood, because it didn't feel right. It felt like for her to have a flashback on something. And then I was like, well, what about her story, the small bit of her story where she arrives at the castle and then she wants to be this thing and it doesn't work out. And it hit me, you know, if she's a thief, if she's a rogue by survival prior to, in the first chapter and whatever chapters in the beginning, perhaps she was a jewel thief or had an appreciation, understanding of the worth of armor, metals, just precious metals and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, how about a jeweler? What if she had a passion for how things worked and how jewels set inside of weapons and rings and whatnot, and she just had a passion for crafting. So therefore, she went and was looking to be an apprentice, but because she didn't have the background, as far as she didn't have the on paper, which how many times have you been there? Or have you seen people and known people where they want to break into a field, but there's gatekeepers that say, well, you don't have experience. You have to have experience in order to get this job. This is an entry level job. And you're like, well, how to get the experience if you won't hire me? It doesn't make sense because it's gatekeeping. So the same kind of concept. And that is what caused her to change and to pivot. And I'm not saying it's a right or wrong pivot that she made. The right or wrongness of it is the irrelevance. Like I said, in my opinion, in my belief, and by the way, my beliefs are not written in stone. My morals are written in stone. My standards are written in stone for myself and for the standards I hold others to. But my understanding of things are in constant flux because you're continually growing and learning and seeing different points of views and different perceptions. So for me, it's fluid is the best word. I know there's better words, but it's malleable. It's like clay. It never quite sets because it's always evolving. So in there with that, no mistakes. So she basically, for right or wrong, chose this path, and now she's choosing better. Now she's choosing to grow. But if you choose a path and then you beat yourself up over it, or you think you're a bad person, everybody is the hero of their own story and the villain of somebody else's. But it's all perception. It's all in how you see it. So in there, she wants better, not because she's a bad person, but she just wants that growth. She needs that growth to survive, to go beyond survival. So I think hopefully I didn't do too many reveals about the book. But here's where we're at, and I'm kind of at a stopping point because I don't want to reveal too much more in this video. And I feel like I've already kind of covered the subject that I wanted to, of the writing of itself, of telling you not to be scared or do it scared. You are your own worst judge. You are your own worst enemy in that fact. So go into your heart space. Feel what feels right, in the higher good of others, where you're not hurting others. You're not stepping on others to get ahead, but you're really feeling yourself and you're empowering yourself, to make those decisions, to make those choices, to seek better because you want growth. You feel stuck, and feeling stuck is really just kind of like you're ready for the next evolution, and you just don't just abandon and not necessarily leap. Take a leap of faith, but also, bring yourself into it. Bring your mind a little bit to say, is this a good idea? Where does this sit? Sit down, make a pros and cons list. Just be aware, bring awareness and intention and attention to what you're doing and the decisions that you're making. And that's kind of what she's doing, what I'm doing in this book, and what I'm trying to pull myself back so that I'm not writing about me, I'm not writing from ego, but also an awareness that I am controlling the narrative by letting it flow, by letting it breathe. I'm keeping it to what feels right. I'm using my own, I can't think of the word right now. It's somewhere around the line of sovereignty, basically knowing of your own power, but also stepping back enough that you're aware when and where to not intercede, but kind of like, and not even control where to help. If you step in at the wrong time to help, you can actually harm. So you have to really have the awareness of who you are and what you mean to the situation that you're bringing yourself to, like what's your intent, and then following your heart. And your heart is really the best way to balance it and to feel this and to kind of like use it as a checkpoint, in the same way that trust yourself. If you're the same person that's afraid of becoming arrogant, of loving yourself too much, if you're the kind of person that is afraid of having too much money because you think you're going to go blow and go and just turn your back on all your friends and your family, and if you're the person that is afraid that if you have power that you're going to become a tyrant or a monster, those things have been embedded in you from your childhood. But also, the same you that has those fears, that is the you that keeps you in check. You are the person that should have those things. There shouldn't be these people that are abusing it because they don't have these checkpoints, these things that keep themselves in check, but you do. You're exactly what the world needs right now. Tell your story, stand up, find your